Now we're going to talk about cars. Let me start with a short little story. A few years ago, I bought my first adult car after getting a job, and it was awesome. And I bought a Volkswagen. It turns out German cars are a long troll just to take your money over a long timeline. And this thing had all the fancy stuff. And I used to listen to big timers in college. Manny Fresh and all that. And of course, they talked about the frog eye headlights, and my Volkswagen has these frog eye headlights. Then I hit a coyote. Then I discovered how many motors there are in the damn headlights that go like this and up and down, and it turns out it's like 40, and I just have to keep taking my car back and forth and back and forth. My point is, in cars these days, there is all kinds of shit that can break, and clearly there is some shit that can break that might be really problematic. And that's what Charlie and Chris are going to talk about right now. So let's give these two guys a big party track welcome.
Party track! My mic's not working, man. All right, cool. How's everyone doing? Good? Hangover's gone? Still drunk? All right. I think you all know Charlie. He's kind of internet famous. Charlie works at Twitter. I'm Chris Valasek. I work at IOActive, and we've been doing some car stuff for a while, and we were here last year. Wanted to continue. Yeah, DEF CON was nice enough to have us last year.
Unlike Black Hat
as well.
So this year we used Black Hat as like practice, and now we're ready for the real time.
Now we got the king sat. We can deliver the real deal here. We have some introductory stuff to go over, how car attacks work, some, remote attack vector samples, talk about cyber stuff. Then we'll cruise through our remote survey, because if you really want to read about that stuff, you should check the paper. It's already out, but I'll release it on the blog next week as well. 95 pages of details about all the cars we looked at, our thoughts and our conclusions. So if you're really, really interested in it, this is our song and dance. If you're really interested in it, read the paper.
But who's going to do that?
I wouldn't, and I wrote the thing.
I looked the other day at our first paper that we released last year, and it had 4 downloads.
The blog had like a gazillion now.
Right, but
well, reading's stupid. That's why I watch movies. Lastly,
that's why our talk is full of movies.
Yeah, that's
our
why
slides are like half a gig.
Yeah, so that's why we never release the slides, just because they're too hard to download. And lastly, we're going to talk about some algorithms and a little advice that Charlie and I came up with to kind of stop all the attacks that we have known about so far.
Right, and there's just to clear the air. There's not going to be any remote shells or anything. It's more of a academic, except we actually release stuff talk, and it's really motivated to talk about remote attacks. And I mean, frankly, it comes back to how we picked out our cars for last year's research, which was very scientific, I would describe it.
How much money can we have? And we need a car that parks ourselves. That's how we chose cars last time.
Cheapest car that has a computer controlling the steering. That was our 2 criteria last year. And so after last year, we wanted to keep doing research, and we wanted to start talking about remote things, and we were like, well, let's do some research on which car we should buy instead of just buying a car, which was really stupid.
Yeah, that was probably a little misguided by us the first time around.
It turns out I was talking with some of the academic guys who did research before us, and they're like, yeah, before we bought our car, we bought all the schematics for all the manufacturers. And I was like, wow, that's a great idea.
I wish we would have done that, because we're like, hey, which 2 cars park themselves? Sweet, can we afford those? Yes, let's do it. That was it.
So this talk is really about the research we did and trying to figure out which car we were going to buy to start doing remote research on. Like we were just going through doing it just for our own selves. It's like, hey, other people might be interested in this. Maybe we should release it.
And Charlie has a special treat for you at the end, so I wouldn't leave early.
Yeah, basically this talk sucks, but if you stay till the last like 5 minutes, I promise there's something good.
Yeah. Well, nowadays everyone seems interested. As soon as there's a car wreck now, the first question ends up being, was the car hacked? We don't know, but everyone seems really interested in this now, and it's really cool research to do because, I don't know, popping shells gets old at one point. So you want to, pop something and then smash it. So that's why I think we've had a blast doing this and have gotten a lot of good feedback and have generally had a good time with it.
You remember that time when you had too much to drink and crashed your car? Actually, it was hacked.
Yeah, absolutely. Ossifer, this car was definitely hacked. Hiccup, beer can.
So like part of this talk also is you read these headlines and they're just all bullshit. Like even the articles about us is usually bullshit.
Yeah, it's usually a big pile of crap.
Right. So we wanted to kind of like get the facts out. So if you're interested in remote attacks and remote car research, like this is going to tell you exactly what you would need to do. And so you don't have to listen to the people who don't know.
Yeah, and it sheds light on things, you know, because everyone would be like, oh, well, it communicates wirelessly. You'll be able to do that and then wreck the car. And you'll see from some of the diagrams, it's not really that straightforward.
Right.
While some cars are one way, other cars are other way, it's not really ever straightforward, but some are less than others.
Cars have computers, but cars are not computers.
Yeah. So Charlie and
Tesla, maybe.
Charlie and I wanted to explain to you how attacks work, and we hired Pixar to do a little animation for us. This broke the budget on this presentation.
I think it was called Pixar.
It's hard to say. They were all hieroglyphic characters I couldn't understand, but they were the cheapest.
Yeah.
So here's how a remote attack works. You have a shadowy guy with a computer. He does internet to things or wireless to things. And from there, you could potentially have code running. That's what we're concerned with. Not kind of eavesdropping and listening to things, but we want to execute code on a computer. And that computer may be on the same network as brakes and steering, or it may be on a different network, which is represented by the chip thing and that blue line.
I think that guy was in Monsters, Inc.
He was. Most people don't know that.
So yeah, so step one, there's 3 steps to a remote attack. Step one is just getting code execution somewhere. Probably, you know, where the Bluetooth stack lives or where the telematics unit is. And, you know, at that point, you can't necessarily do harm to the car. You can, you know what radio they're listening to, or maybe you can record their voice. But we don't care about that. We want to like crash them.
Yeah, we want to smash them up. So, you know, after you figure out how to get on that computer, can you send messages as well? You know, while, you know, say most cars have steering angle sensors, a lot of them don't park themselves. And that might mean you can't control the steering at all. So you have to figure out what parts of the automobile are actually controllable via these computer messages. So again, while they're all the parts of the car are really computerized, it doesn't mean that these network messages are going to be able to control it all the time. It really depends.
And that's what our research was last year. So there's these 3 steps. Step 1, remote code execution. Step 2, can you send messages from the radio or wherever you landed to things like steering wheel and brakes? Step 3 is, can you make the steering wheel and brakes do something? And that's what our whole research was last year. Was can you send messages on the CAN bus to make the steering wheel and brakes do something? And of course we showed you could.
Yeah. And step 4, smash them up. So that usually ends up being step 4. People have done this already. So it's not theoretical to have wireless code execution to a car to control physical aspects to take control. The researchers from the University of Washington, the University of California, San Diego did this a couple years ago.
In 2011.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, it really exists.
Do we have sound? Sound.
Beep, beep, boop, beep, 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 beep. That was the internet. Oh, that looks dangerous. Here we go. Closed test track.
Can we get sound besides Chris Valisek's voice? Look out. We've got something in the road. High volume can cause hearing loss, it says. Oh, wait. I hear something. You guys hear it, or am I only hearing it? Oh, it's working.
This video is really soft.
Right.
Awesome.
So what they showed was by attacking the telematics unit, there was a vulnerability in it. They were able to get code execution. They were able to send messages to the brakes. They were able to lock up the brakes.
Yeah.
And crash a car.
Yeah,
Almost.
and you know, we were plugged in the vehicle, but we kind of did some different things. We leveraged the actual normal CAN messages that you see to perform action in the car. So this is a video of us crashing a reporter from Fox News.
Because if you're going to crash a reporter, the Fox News guy is the guy you want to get.
And we just smashed. We were in Pittsburgh, and we were off, just smashed into an embankment off the road. The best part was, as you saw him, he kind of took his hands off the wheel. And the moment he said that, Charlie was like, "Don't do that!" And then I pressed the button, and then that's why we wrecked.
Yep, it was awful. I was in the backseat with Chris, and he's got his head down, And he's like, the reporter's like, so you guys can make the steering wheel turn. And we're like, yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, show me. So Chris is about to hit the button. I see the guy take his hands off the wheel, and I'm like, no.
The cameraman was face backwards in the passenger seat, and he came out ghost white. I'm pretty sure he went home to his wife and kids and gave him a big hug that night.
He's like, he goes, did you guys mean to do that?
I was like, oh yeah, I'm sorry. Did you almost die? I apologize. Shit.
Because earlier we were like, you should put your seatbelt on. And he's like, well, I can't really get the shot then. I was like, okay.
Yeah, listen, not my fault.
You're the professional.
Yeah. All this comes down to, as Charlie said before, we think remote hacking for control of a vehicle is three parts. It's remote attack surface. I think everyone's kind of familiar with that because everyone's familiar with wireless communications. Right?
Yeah, we wanted to like look at these cars and figure out which one to buy and hack. And we wanted to try to figure out which of those three steps would be the easiest for the car. And we can't go out and buy 30 cars and look for bugs in 30 Bluetooth stacks because we're
time, effort, money. We don't have all that.
Right. We're just not very smart or motivated.
Yeah.
So what we did instead of actually doing that and trying to find vulnerabilities in 20 cars, we just looked at the size of the attack surface for 20 cars or 30 cars or whatever, and we were just like, well, the bigger the attack surface, probably the more bugs there's going to be. The better chance you're going to have at least of getting a remote exploit.
Yeah. I mean, humans write code. The more code there is, the more chance for a mistake. That's the way we figure it. If you have a different opinion, I don't know.
Then just leave.
Yeah.
Please.
Get out.
We'll come back for the last 10 minutes.
Yeah, come back for the last second, obviously. The other part was what we would call cyber-physical. And those are basically computers that take messages that control physical aspects of the car. And these are getting more and more common. Adaptive cruise control, the car will brake if it sees a car in front of it. City driving, things like that. These are ways that you can almost guarantee that you can send a computer message to control an aspect. A lot of the times people are using these diagnostic messages and you may or may not be able to do something, but with these kind of cyber-physical aspects of the car, they're designed to perform physical actions instead of just being a test.
All right, so what we found when we did our research on the Escape and the Prius was that the Escape had no sort of automatic braking capabilities at all. We were able to make the brakes lock up and make them not work, which was really exciting, but that took basically a vulnerability. On the Prius, they had a computer designed to send messages on the CAN bus to engage the brakes. And so there we didn't need a vulnerability, we just had to do what they do, and it's a feature, right? So cyber-physical is a feature in the Prius.
Exactly.
So when we're trying to figure out of these 30 cars which one we want to buy because we think it's easiest to hack, again, we don't know whether the brakes have a vulnerability that allow us to make it engage or not. But what we can do is say the cars that have the most cyber-physical features probably are going to be the ones that have the most things you can control once you're on the CAN bus.
I mean, we want to be successful at this because we don't want to look like bigger losers than we already are. So we need a car that we think we have the best chance with. And
like, man, do you remember that battery hacking talk I gave?
Yeah, that was a miserable failure. It was terrible.
Finley guys talk about failure and no one even...
I literally didn't watch it because it was just embarrassing.
It was. So we don't want to do another talk where I failed.
Exactly. And the third piece is network architecture, which is a lot of this is about, and I think a lot of people, especially the media, were very keen on, but remember, it's only kind of 1/3 of the whole equation we're talking about. And certain cars have certain features at certain places. They're not all just this big flat network. They can be segregated. So certain cars may provide other challenges that other ones don't.
All right, so what the second step is with the network architecture is, so if you attack, say, the radio, and you want to control, say, the brakes, can you get messages from one to the other? You can imagine a car that's designed such that there's no physical way to get messages from one to the other. In which case, you're safe. Like, you can attack my radio all you want, you can't crash me, cool. I'm happy with that. And then other cars might have those, on the same ECU. It wouldn't, but they could. Or they might be just right next to each other in a network. There's nothing in the way to stop messages from flowing from one to the other. So we took all three of those things and combined them to try to figure out which cars, like we wanted to do research on, which cars we thought we'd have the most success trying to do a remote attack.
Exactly.
As a prelude to next year's DEF CON talk.
Exactly.
We got those cars.
Now we got the cars we want. Now we just need another year to pop them, right?
Or you'll never hear from us.
Or I'm just going to ride off into the sunset and that'll be that. Again, features for most people, I think, now are attack surface for us, right? These cars are becoming more and more complex. They're becoming more and more connected. And that's why this work gets even more intriguing, because they're just super, super complicated computers on four wheels that can park and break themselves. So it's, I'll continue talking. Take it.
You're supposed to be talking.
Oh, I thought I was going to OG it, but no, I failed. But yeah, cars are complicated. It's going to be cool to hack them, and we think more and more people need to start looking at them as well. There's too many cars for any 2, 3, 40, 100 individuals to look at. Everyone needs to start looking at it just as they're looking at the code around the internet.
Because last year we released tools for people to look at cars and information on how to do it, and so by now I figured we'd have it covered. For some reason, no one actually did anything.
Yeah, it's probably because the tools were crap, but what are you going to do? Remote attack surface, again.
My tool was awesome.
I think mine was better, but there's a lot of remote attack surface. We only cover a few. I think we can cruise through these pretty quick.
I'm taking my time. I hope you're cool with that.
Go ahead, bro.
No, we're going to go in like all different kinds of things that you could imagine attacking remotely a vehicle. And we're going to sort of go in increasing range. So the first one we have here is what is it called? Passive, what's it stand for? I don't remember. Anyway,
passive something.
It's something you wouldn't want to attack.
It starts the car.
Yeah, so on the left, you see the instrument cluster from the Ford Escape that we ripped out. And on the right is the little thing that goes around where your key goes in. And there's a little antenna in there, and the data is passed between it and the key to make sure that only the right key can actually start the ignition. So, from an attack perspective, like I don't care about someone making a fake key and cloning it. What I care about is could you have like a little radio station sending radio waves that somehow exploit a vulnerability in the code, waiting for this information from the key and get code execution.
Yeah. And this one doesn't seem that likely, right? It's not much data sent over radio, and it's a couple millimeters in range. So while it is an attack surface, probably not the best.
Like you'd be remotely attacking, you'd be the guy sitting in the seat with a giant ass antenna pointing right at the
I think it is pretty obvious when you see giant antenna man in the passenger seat.
Right. I'd be like, nope, I wasn't plugged in. That was remote right there.
Exactly.
So that one's, you could attack it, but probably not your first choice. The next one is a tire pressure monitoring system. So all the cars today, since I don't know when, have little...
2006.
Thank you, Mr. Egghead. So they have little sensors in the tires, and they communicate wirelessly with an antenna that then is processing that message and taking action, like saying, puts up a light, hey, you're getting a flat tire, or whatever. In the Ford here, this is an ECU called the Smart Junction Box. It has the antenna that receives the signal from these sensors. Anyway, the point is here, you've got maybe a little more range, like a couple meters. But again, there's almost going to be no sort of complexity in the data that's going to be passed. It's all going to be, like...
It's a number, right? It's the PSI of your tire. So again,
it might be a little more than a number, but it's not much more than a number. But researchers have... communicate successfully with cars here, and they've even bricked ECUs, which kind of makes you think, there's something going on. I'm guessing it's some sort of, null pointer.
Yeah, something, right? So, I mean, there is code running. They've been bricked, so that means there's probably some stuff there, but again, we still don't think it's the best candidate for remote entry into a vehicle.
But it's way better than the stupid key.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing almost everyone here is familiar with, right, or probably everyone is remote keyless entry, your little car clicker that can, start and sometimes start the engine of the car as well. These, again, broader range, we're talking more than a couple meters now, but again, a con of it is probably not much data, right? This kind of maybe challenge response, or you send a specific value to open or start the car, but not really too much else. But on the other hand, it's usually connected to a lot of cool parts, right? Locking and unlocking the door and starting the engine, so it ends up being at a cool place in the car. Probably more concerned with theft from reproducing these things as opposed to code execution, as a car flies by to do brakes or steering, but still probably a more viable option than a lot.
Right. The other bad thing about these are car manufacturers really care about theft, and so they're going to like really lock down these sort of ECUs, and they're going to care a lot about making them hard to reverse engineer and stuff. Where the other ones we're going to get to in a second, they probably don't care about that as much.
Yeah, exactly. One of the more familiar, wireless protocols that everyone is familiar with is Bluetooth, and we think this is probably one of the most ripe attack surfaces, right? Because almost every car has it now because there's so many mandates for not using your phone or demanding hands-free while you drive. Additionally, a lot of times they support streaming of audio and data, right? You can stream your music, and it also gets the album art. I don't believe that there's a lot of code out there that hasn't had a vulnerability for image parsing or audio parsing, right? And these are things that people are kind of familiar with. Especially since they've been around for a while. They may be using old open source software that has known vulnerabilities, so there could just be NDAY if you just have to get it through Bluetooth. So we really think this is one of the most viable attack surfaces for a vehicle.
The academic researchers we mentioned earlier in 2011 actually remotely popped the Bluetooth stack on their 2009 car. And they said it was as easy as grubbing for string copy.
Yeah, bling. You want to take this one?
Sure. So even further, but still, what was that Bluetooth? You got to be, I don't know, 10 meters or 30 meters or something. So you got to be able to see the car, basically, or be close enough. But there's some now that you don't really have to be very close at all. So in your radio, you can see the beautiful radio from my cheap Ford Escape on the left, and then some random one I found on the internet on the right. There's, it's obviously getting, FM or AM signal or something with audio in it. Which probably, I can't imagine there being a vulnerability, but there's actually more data than that coming. So like in the one on the right, you can see I'm jamming out to Kelly Clarkson like I always do. And not
Top
really.
40, 106.7, The Beat.
Not really, please. So anyway, unless you really like Kelly Clarkson, in which case I really do too.
Yeah, same.
But this is data that's sent in addition to the actual song. So, you can imagine, people screwing up the parsing of this text or whatever that comes with it.
Yeah, people tend to mess up string parsing. That's happened for a long time.
But again, it's still pretty small attack surface. Like I would go after Bluetooth before I went after this.
Really the holy grail a lot for all of this is telematics cellular, which is, the gateway now for Wi-Fi in cars as well. The range is practically unlimited. If you're in cellular range, you're in range for these things. They're designed to work everywhere, right? Because you want to hit an SOS button, or you want to get this information and connectivity everywhere.
Or you can be like Chris, who wants to get dinner reservations.
Oh, yeah.
And he calls the 911.
Yeah, so I got the new car, and it had the SOS button, but I was told that I had a concierge, and I hit a button, and I was like, oh, I need dinner reservations. Well, I keep pounding the SOS button. I was like, yo, I need dinner reservations. They're like, sir, is this an emergency? I was like, yes, I don't have dinner reservations, Friday. And they're like, oh, you have to hit the other button. I was like, oh, well, I'm sorry. They're like, yeah, this is the emergency hotline. This is for when people are like dying. I was like, oh, all right, well, can you still get dinner reservations for tonight?
Yes, this is there's some cellular phone essentially built into the car that is communicating data, across the world to whoever.
Yeah, and this is probably what most automobile manufacturers are worried about because the range is so broad, and the protocols used are pretty well understood.
Right, and as we mentioned before, the academics remotely pop that as well.
Yeah. The new thing I think that it becomes very concerning for us are cars are now getting their own apps on the infotainment system. They're connecting to the internet. They're having web browsers. We know for a fact we can't write secure web browsers and we can't write secure apps.
I also know how to write a browser exploit.
I know, yeah. I hope to have a car with a web browser because I know how to write a web browser exploit.
I can't write a Bluetooth exploit.
No, I don't know anything about Bluetooth.
I can't write anything except a browser exploit.
Exactly. So this adds attack surface that a large part of the security community is already familiar with, and I think that's why it ends up being pretty concerning.
So imagine if you bought a device in, say, 2012, it was a piece of hardware and it had a web browser on it and you couldn't update it. Like, would you be worried? Well, that's what these cars basically are.
Exactly. It's a if there is a problem, it's really hard to fix as well.
And don't you dare press that
I'm
forward
not.
button.
I'm not.
So
I'll wait for you.
the other thing is, I have this new Jeep. It's really cool. It has it can be a Wi-Fi hotspot. So it provides internet to like kids in their DSs or whatever. But it actually, you can look in the slide here. It has like open services. So like you can Nmap scan your car. So we're getting closer and closer to these cars being more like software, which people like us, most of us in this room, can understand, instead of hardware problems, which are much harder for us.
Like Bluetooth and radio stuff seems kind of still boutique-y in the game, while Nmap scanning your car and looking at services is something that we've been doing for years and years and years.
And my Jeep has IRC apparently, which is sweet. Although there's something wrong, it doesn't work. But
it must have came pre-backdoored for you, so it can communicate over IRC.
Yeah.
Cyber physical. As I just explained before, they control physical attributes. I'm not the biggest fan of cyber anything.
Yeah, you are.
Well, one very specific cyber. But the thing is, people in the government sector, people in the private sector, and people in the public sector use these terms. And if we're going to get along and communicate and work with each other, we just have to agree on a set of verbiage. And it seems like they kind of get to set it, and if we want to communicate with them, we'll play along.
I don't agree. From now on in this talk, instead of using the word cyber physical, I'm going to say devices in your car that can control physical things in the car. I'm not saying cyber physical.
Have at it, buddy.
So anyway, here's an example of a thing in your car that cyber physical.
Yeah. Now we're just going to go through. I have a Q50. It's a sweet car. Has all these awesome features.
Yeah, these are features that cars have, and not many of us actually realize that cars have so many features. At least I didn't, because I don't think it's a car.
Forward distance control will allow the car to stop itself when it sees an object in front of it.
So he's not touching the brake.
We've come to a complete stop.
As you see, I am on a closed test track there in Pittsburgh. I'm not trying to smash in the back of a public transit vehicle.
I thought that was a Hollywood test scene, and that's like a cardboard.
Yeah, no, it
bus.
absolutely. It's all green screened, actually. But yeah, you're gonna have this control that you don't have to press the brakes. If it sees an object in front of you, it'll stop. From our experience, systems like that send messages. A sensor, computes some values and sends it to a computer, which send messages on a network, and the brakes listen to them, and they wind up stopping the vehicle.
So that means there's a sensor and it hooked up to the brakes somehow that can make the brakes engage. And what we've seen in all the cars we've looked at, that means there's a computer that knows what the sensor values are and computes whether it should engage the brakes, and it communicates to the brakes, usually over the CAN bus, how to do that, or when to do that. And so that means if you're on the CAN bus, you can just be the ECU.
Exactly. Things as simple as
the automobile,
lights.
Even the headlamps are connected to the vehicle's network. You'll see the headlamps move from right to left.
Hearing Chris from over here while he's saying here is
and back again.
It's pretty meta. Yeah, so even things as simple as headlamps nowadays are going to be connected to the car's network, because you want the headlamps to turn with the corner, right? It provides a better driving experience and more safety. But at the same time, you just added another piece of the automobile onto the car's network, and it needs to know the steering angle, right? Because it needs to know where to turn the lights. So these two things that before were completely separate are now kind of joined together.
Right, and the thing that I think is really important about this that I just thought of, even after the paper. So that means not only are, the headlamps on the network, because who really cares? Like, you can control my headlamps, I don't give a shit. But it means that the steering has to be network accessible to the headlamps. That means they have to, you've sort of like reduced the complexity of the network you can have, because you can't isolate those things which you think would be isolated.
I mean, it may have a gateway in between them, but they still have to communicate. Intelligent cruise control, again, something
Adaptive cruise control
that
is
most
another
cars
great
have.
feature. As you see, we're set at 24 miles an hour.
Line this
There are vehicles
PT
ahead of
Cruiser
us.
up right in front of me.
And the car, without any
Gas
interaction, will actually stop once it sees the back of the vehicles. We're slowing down now, below 24, and then the car will speed back up again.
So the car came to a stop all on its own, and now the car in front took off, so the car took off.
Again, the car slows itself down, speeds itself up. There's a very big potential for this to happen over network communications and not just sensors and wires directly into an ECU. So
that means there's an ECU sending messages to the car saying to accelerate or brake, which means that might be something we can take advantage of.
Cyber physical aspect of the vehicle is active lane control. If the car is drifting out of its lane, it will actively steer back into the center.
So the cool thing is,
we might just have to skip all the material
to try to keep the car in the lane.
Again,
regardless of driver
the
interaction.
car will look at the markers on the road and kind of I described it as handicapping itself back and forth between the lanes to keep you.
You just really dated yourself.
I did.
There's like one old guy in the back who's like, "Oh, handicap."
Oh man, I'll tell you what, my wife hits me with a rolling pin too. It's terrible. But yeah, these again, steering, man. Steering is going to become a piece that is going to be network accessible because these features are very useful. They keep drivers more safe. So it's inevitable that they're
So this
happening.
means there's a computer that can control the steering while you're driving at highway speeds.
Yeah.
So here I am jamming out to some 80s rock. But the point of, besides that, is that the car is going to self-park, which means there's a computer that can control the steering. And you'll notice it's not just like the old Escape I had, which just did one crank. Like this one's doing like constant adjustments while I drive, which is pretty badass. Don't you forget about me. So anyway, see in our Black Hat talk, which was awful compared to this awesome talk, they didn't have sound, so you couldn't hear that. So you guys are getting bonus material.
It's bonus.
So here's the collision prevention system in the Jeep. Some more jamming music. Okay, we're about to try out the collision prevention system here. So I set up some boxes to simulate a car because I will not touch the brake. Like
Charlie was afraid to go against a real car like me.
All right.
And you'll see why.
So I'm just pulling up. I'm not going to touch the brakes no matter what. Oh, you hear the beeping? So there was a. I swear the brakes actually do work automatically, but in that instance, they didn't.
I guess the radar knew it was cardboard and not a public transit vehicle.
Right.
I'm gonna skip the next one.
Nah, do the next one too. He's gonna skip this.
It's the same shot.
No, it's a different shot. Same scene.
Different angle.
So this is just why car hacking is way more cool than browser hacking.
Can you imagine what they thought about this psychopath stacking up boxes and just driving through them?
No. So anyway, it was a lot of fun. It's way more fun than looking at GDB.
Yeah,
sure.
testing that is a lot better than connecting a debugger 100 times in a row and failing.
I almost actually really crashed because, for one thing, I thought I was going to stop. It even made the beeping like it normally does. I don't know. But anyway, one of the boxes was like smashed underneath my car. And it was like, I was kind of
dragging it.
I was kind of like skidding on it. I was like, whoa, that's crazy. It was then I was glad I had my racing helmet on.
Yeah, and your gloves.
Yep. Which I didn't have either.
We had goals, and again, a lot of the press coverage really was on the network architecture review, but we wanted to look at these kind of three separate pieces to a remote attack and look at cars and decide if we were to get one, which one would we get, and which one do we think we would have the most success with. We use the term hackability, but as we said before, it's not that we got every car and tried to hack them. We just use that term because it's less syllables than explaining it every time as well.
Right. We wanted a term that said car which would prevent the least possible problems to a remote attacker.
Yeah.
Like hackable is way
cooler. Exactly. And our thought too was you can go buy a Consumer Reports magazine and it'll tell you which cars have the best safety features and which cars got the best ratings. I think we should start doing this for the cybersecurity of vehicles or just Internet of Things stuff, right? We want to know what kind of security we think these things have when we buy them so you can be an informed consumer. Again, white paper. If you really want to read it, you should. There's a lot of good stuff in there.
So we've presented so far about 10 pages of the white paper. We're going to do the next 70 pages in 4 minutes.
Exactly. There's a lot of setbacks for this. Just getting the information was hard because none of it's standard, right? Like every manufacturer is different. So you go to a mechanic's site, the searching for things is hard. Their wiring diagrams are all different. So we really tried to correlate everything, and it took a long time, surprisingly.
And the reason we decided to get these diagrams and go to the mechanic sites is because when we were doing the car research the first time, we were just, we're used to download Adobe Reader and try to hack it. Like there's no instructions on how it's designed. And so we would just do it. And then later on, we started to look at the wiring diagrams in these cars, and it's like, that explains
this
everything.
makes sense. We should have used these long ago.
Right.
But that's what hackers do, right? You didn't want to read the instructions. You buy a new table at IKEA and you throw those things out and spend the next 10 days trying to build your desk.
And this is the proof we're not hackers anymore because we did the opposite.
Exactly.
We read the instructions and we didn't actually do the hacking.
Exactly. The internet's hard. Let's go shopping. A lot of the websites we just found.
For real, let's do it right now.
Let's just walk out here. The websites just weren't very
They're horrible.
usable.
They're horrible.
Yeah, I was
They're
trying
from
to be
like
nice.
1985.
Yeah, like you search things like CAN and just you get nothing. Like, no, I know you have a CAN bus. I've used it. Just if you're not logged in, you don't get search results. But if you are, you get some different ones. This constantly, like, they'll only work Tuesdays and Wednesdays and then banking holidays.
You'll get pages that look like they're working perfectly but suck, and then you load up like IE6, and then there's like more information.
Yeah,
they don't tell you use a different browser. They just show you less stuff.
Yeah, we would call each other. He's like, I can't find this. Like, oh, dude, just get IE7, and you have to go look at it. So I'm sure all the computers we're using for this research are just owned to hell and back as well.
This was a huge collaboration between the NSA and automotive manufacturers to exploit our computers.
Exactly. So it took time. Now honestly, what we think is the boring part, which is the remote survey. We tried to make it easy. If you get the paper, you'll see these icons used. There are more computers on the networks that we talk about than these things, but we figured these things are kind of the important pieces, the pieces that we want to research and are concerned with.
All right, so for all the ECUs that had remote attack service, and then there were all the ECUs that had cyber physical things, we put them on the diagram and saw whether there was something in between them.
Yep. And we're going to go fly through these diagrams because there's really not much to say. You want to read the paper and look at them, but just note there's a bunch of different architectures. Audi's, for example, was one that how I thought most of the cars would be, where they have all the internet stuff somewhere, and then all the important cyber physical stuff somewhere, and then some other stuff other places connected by a gateway, and that's how they're set up. Obviously, this is not the case because you have things like, a new Accord where you have an audio nav unit that has the internet stuff that's connected to both CAN buses. So things like that end up looking kind of problematic to us, right? Because if you hack Bluetooth, that means you're on a device that's not only on your powertrain CAN bus, but you're also on your secondary CAN bus as well.
So between these last two cars, this one is going to be way easier. It's going to present less obstacles to an attacker because in those 3 steps, there is no step 2. You get step 2 for free. You only have to go remote and then figure out how to make the brakes or whatever.
Exactly. You have an Infinity Q50 where you have almost everything on one CAN bus and then kind of a gateway that communicates with steering and braking. Again, having a lot of stuff on one bus, especially where it contains all of the wireless connectivity features, is something that we, probably think can be used to easily achieve the hacking of the car.
Right, and just because there happens to be a gateway between, say, the radio and the brakes, that doesn't mean you can't send messages or figure out how to do it. It just means there's going to be something to make it possibly harder.
Exactly.
The academics were able to go from a part of the car's network to where the brakes and stuff were by reprogramming the gateway. So it's possible you can get by these gateways.
Yeah, they're not stopping everything. We just don't know. We have to look at them.
Yeah, you have to look at it. But it's something else you'd have to look at.
Yeah.
And like in the Escape, there's a gateway between 2 networks, one where the TPMS is and one where the brakes are. And since we had that, I looked at it. And that one, there doesn't seem to be any way to get messages from the TPMS to the brakes. I don't know how to do it. So it might be possible, but probably not. And if nothing else, it's going to be hard as hell.
Exactly. And you can see how cars kind of went through an evolution, right? Here's a 2010 G37 and a 2006 G35, kind of each car taking place of the other. It went from kind of these flat CAN networks to a more segmented one because they added more features and more functionality.
Right. So people are going to say, I'm going to go buy the G35 2006. It's so secure.
Yeah, no. I buy the new car. It has all these great safety features. Those things are going to save your ass way more than they're going to, be hacked and crash your car, honestly.
Yeah. I drive out of my lane all the time, and my car saves me way more than I've been hacked.
That thing stops itself and steers itself. I just drive and tweet the whole time, just all day.
Why wouldn't you? You'd be stupid
just
not to.
Just drinking a latte, tweet, and let the car do its thing.
All right, so I don't know if we even have time to go to this, but this car is the one that I ended up getting because I considered it the most hackable. If you look, there's 2 different CAN buses. All the interesting things are on the one called CAN C, so like steering and brakes. But then there's the radio, which has almost all the wireless stuff, and it lives on both of those networks. So essentially, it doesn't look like a flat network, but from an attacker's perspective, this is completely flat. Everything you care about can be reached from everything with a remote attack service.
And while the Dodge is the same way, it just doesn't have as many cyber physical things, even though it has the same network architecture.
Right, the Chrysler 300, it's made by the same parent company, but its network looks a lot different. Here, the big difference is that the radio is only on the sort of least privileged CAN network and not the one that has like the brakes. So even though you think, hey, they're both, the
same parent company, they would be exactly the same. It doesn't end up being that way. The Dodge, basically the same as the 300, but just less cyber physical features because it only meant to go fast.
I really wanted that to be the most hackable so I could justify buying one, but damn it.
The Escalade, as you see, another one of the ones where it has kind of segmented CAN networks, but all the interesting stuff is actually connected to both of them. Old Ford Fusion, not very much in it. New Ford Fusion, a lot of stuff in it. So again, these things go through an evolution. BMW as well.
So you'll notice the cars that we said were most hackable turn out to be the ones that have the most features, and I mean that's not a coincidence, right? So, but that doesn't mean that we want cars with less features. What it means is we want cars with like all sorts of rad, cool features, but designed in a secure manner.
Exactly. And you can see BMW very similar throughout most of their cars, except things like their concept car, which again is crazy.
But even that is segmented.
Yeah, exactly. Range Rover, again, very segmented, and hasn't changed all that much in the kind of evolution of their vehicles, right? Where you just have, they end up using technology and still enjoy it and still are probably familiar with it and have suppliers that use it, so it happens a lot. Sometimes they don't change at all. The 2014 Prius, basically identical to the 2010 Prius, but at one point you had this massive shift in architecture. Again, more features, more complexity, so they re-architect how these things are done.
We've been told to like eliminate our chatter about Obama's car in this version of the talk,
yes,
so.
someone was, don't talk about the president's car in this one.
But what about like gangster rappers? Let's talk about their cars.
Yeah.
What do they drive? Escalades for sure? Range Rovers?
Probably. Bentleys, all the cars we didn't look at, Bentleys and all that shit. What do we say? Cars are getting more CUs. They're becoming more complex. Manufacturers have different designs for different cars. We've been saying this almost for 2 years. Almost every car we look at has something different about it, right?
This is the thing that makes car hacking sort of hard, because even if you can know everything about a car, it doesn't generalize to other cars for the most part. Which is why we did this talk. Like, we gave this talk last year where we knew everything about 2 cars, but we know nothing about any other car. And now we're giving a talk where we know a little bit about all the cars, but not much about any of them.
I think one of the biggest things that we thought about after doing all this is, holy shit, patching is a huge disaster, right? We get Windows Update or Mac Update or whatever. It's easy, it works quickly, and it's almost automatic. When there's a problem in a car right now, they send you a letter and tell you to go to a mechanic shop to get your car fixed, right? I assume most people ignore these. What happens when you sell the car? So right now there's this huge issue with patching. So if something does come out, there's no good way to fix it.
When I get a recall notice, I just get in a fit of rage. I throw it down and I rip it up.
I'm still getting recall notices for the Prius and the Ford Escape. I just rip them up and throw them away.
We're like, nah, we think those cars are fine. They don't need to be.
Those cars are fine. They're dead. Securing the automobile, I think, is important to us. You can secure endpoints, which people are doing right now. Maybe you could kind of segment CAN message injection. Does the thing with a Bluetooth stack actually need to write messages on the bus? Probably not. I don't know. I'm not an automotive architect, but All
right. From what we can tell, manufacturers are mostly focused on stopping remote attacks, the step 1 of the 3 steps, where we think you should try to make all 3 steps difficult, just like all the lessons we've learned.
Yeah. Can you see it's kind of turning back the clock. This is the same steps we were going through in the late 90s and early aughts with computer security, and we're seeing the same things happen in cars. Crypto, generally speaking, not going to work.
I feel so sorry for those people who are leaving. They're going to be so upset.
They're going to start crying when they don't see this. We saw network segregation, at least from our perspective, adds a layer of complexity and an obstacle for attackers. But what didn't we talk about? And what we didn't talk about that's used almost ubiquitously in everyone's corporate environments is detection and prevention. I present to you the CAN No Hackalator 3000. So we came up with these algorithms and I kind of architected the whole thing. Charlie implemented it.
You were there.
I was present.
Yes.
So that's something. Basically, press a button, learn how the car works. If anything strays from this gold standard, we think it's bad because we've saw how attacks work and there's no way to kind of obfuscate them because the networks are so simple. And then we can stop the attack. So we have this little thing here.
Right. So I mean, the main thing that is car networks are different than, say, the internet. The network traffic is completely predictable. It's computers talking to computers. And so things like attacks really stand out.
Yep. Hit it. Go.
So here's my brother-in-law's Ford. Because the real Ford is smashed up, but he lets me use it for testing. Like a sucker.
So I can't stop right now.
So this is the brake stop.
Closed test track.
On here.
Yes, on my test track.
Obviously, that's a very dangerous attack.
Very dangerous, Charlie. I totally agree.
Now I'm going to turn on the detector here.
Alright, so now it's
learning the dynamics of the CAN network.
Yes, I agree again,
Charlie. This would work for any car. It's
How are you doing, Video
specifically designed to prevent this attack.
Video Charlie's so smart.
For abnormalities. So now, once again, I try to run the same attack. The attack fails this time.
So when I tried the attack the second time.
So the car still has steering brakes, everything's cool. Obviously it knows there's something wrong because the computers can no longer communicate with each other. But the important thing is I'm safe from attack. I can safely drive the vehicle to a repair shop.
So this, you saw, it only took a few seconds to learn how the car works. And if we ran the attack that disabled the brakes, could see it fast enough and stop it before it happened. And we opted to short the CAN bus out. So nothing would work, but I'm sure you could do something else as well.
And it's not like it's looking at signatures of attacks. This is just like anything that's anomalous, and all attacks that we know of and the academics know of would be caught by this. Without
so you can plug this into any car. You don't need to know what car it is, as long as you can get a nice sample of the traffic happening on the vehicle.
And that's it. Thanks. Oh wait, there's one more thing. Oh, I totally got it.
Let's left.
I can't believe
suckers.
It. All right, so there is one more thing. Suckers. All right, so that talk sucked. So we're gonna have some bugs drop now. So I have two methods I'll show you to jailbreak your Jeep or Chrysler or Dodge or Ram or Fiat or SRT, whatever.
I think SRT is like a model number.
Like a skateboard or something?
Yeah, sure.
I don't know. Anyway, here's how you can jailbreak your car. So the way that updates work is for these vehicles is you get a USB stick and you download an ISO file, put it on there, stick it in your car. The car sees that there's this USB stick with a certain named ISO file. It checks it against a cryptographic hash, and if that's cool, then it updates your car. I had an idea. I was like, okay, I'll wait until it checks for, it runs through and it verifies that the file's cool, and then I'm going to like switch out the USB stick. So I'm going to see if that works. So here's my attempt at that. So it's already checked it. It says it's cool. Do you want to install it? I pull out the USB stick.
Didn't work.
It totally busted me. So when I pull out the stick, it was like, oh, no, you're not going to change up on me. I'm not going to let you do that, right? So they thought about this. So well done, Chrysler. But they didn't think about this. So now I go a little further. I say, yes, I would like to install this new software. So it starts to do its thing, and you'll notice I look at my hand here in a second because I'm ready.
And by the noises, you're camping.
That's the frog by my house. So as soon as it goes to restart, I pull the USB stick out. Now the car is in a bit of a pickle because it has written values to itself saying it needs a restart in like upgrade mode. But it realizes that it doesn't have anything to upgrade from now. So what it's going to do now, instead of totally rejecting me, in a moment it's going to actually do the opposite. It's going to beg me for a new USB stick.
You're going to put the same one that was in there, right?
No, I think I'm going to use a different one.
Fair enough.
So I'm going to use a different USB stick. I'm going to stick it in there, and now it's still going to check to make sure that it's signed, but now the code that does the checking actually is from the USB stick, and I'm going to leave out that little part. All right, so if you fast forward here a bit, you can probably see now it says insert USB stick. So bad. Oops. You do it. So anyway, you can fast forward to like the very tippy end, and you'll see that. Never mind. You ruined it. Okay. Jailbreak method number 2. This is the preferred method for elite hackers. So you can take the upgrade file and you can reverse it, and there's some Lua scripts in there. One of which is in charge of doing the cryptographic checking. So if you notice, there's this like awesome little code snippet there. So what it does is it opens up the file. It reads 128 bytes into the file. It reads 1 byte. It checks to see if that byte is a capital S. If it is, they even provided this like awesome print statement. Check or skip ISO integrity. Like, I'm a good reverse engineer, but like, I think most people could probably find that one.
I found it. Found it.
Yeah. So I took my ISO file, I modified it, and I added the capital letter S, and lo and behold, it totally worked. So then I could do things like, it already has SSH on it, so I just turned it on. I changed the root password, and now I can SSH into my car, which is pretty badass.
And what would you do? Oh, also.
So I know if I could SSH into my car, I would do this. I don't know what you all would do, but this is what I would do. I make it when you start your car, you see me and Chris. That's it. We're out of time. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I really appreciate it.